I am here at Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore with authors Kiersten White and Brendan Reichs. So, you guys want to talk a little bit about your books?
Sure, Kiersten, ladies first.
So my most recent series is the Anti-Darken series. It follows Lada Dracul and her brother Radu. They are taken as political prisoners in the Ottoman court, and it's loosely based on Vlad D.M. Taylor's real life.
Must have been a fun real life. So, my name is Brendan Reichs. I'm author of the Project Nemesis series, which involves Nemesis and my new book Genesis, which came out last week. And it is about two kids, Min and Noah. They're 16-year-olds, and every 2 years on their birthday, they are murdered by the same person. Except for they don't die like a normal person. Instead, they wake up a couple hours later without a scratch on them, a mile away from their houses, with all evidence of the crime erased. So in Nemesis, they're trying to figure out how that's possible and happening to them, and in doing so, they uncover a large government conspiracy which may implicate all life on Earth. So it's a bit of a wild conspiracy. I really can't talk much about Genesis.
You can't talk at all about
because,
it.
literally even, telling you how it begins is a spoiler, but it's been described as a technological retelling of Lord of the Flies, and I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I wanted to my characters are now in a place where they can't, which they have to make their own rules, and how they're going to govern themselves, and there's a lot of different conditions, and that's honestly as specific as I can get, but it gets dark, and a lot of people die.
What is your favorite part of writing? Is it the characters? Is it the world building? What do you enjoy doing the most?
I really like first drafting,
Really?
only on book
Really?
ones, because you're chasing the story and you're kind of discovering it. It's almost like you're telling yourself the story, and it's this super high, and then you finish it and you're like, oh wait, this is garbage, and then you have to fix it. But that first special draft, which doesn't always happen in first drafts, but when it does, it's like the most amazing feeling.
I despise first drafts. I don't even call them a first draft. I refer to it as a draft zero because I don't want it to have any connotations in my mind that it's supposed to have any value to me. Because I will change characters' names. I will split characters into two. I will just drop characters if I don't think they're going to. But I just finish it. My goal the first time through is to finish it so that I can then get to what I enjoy doing, which is revising. Because I think my books are made in revision. I never really come up with the good ideas for my twists or my plots until I've been living with the story for about a month. And I'm about 2/3 of the way through. And typically, in the shower, I will come up with other great ideas. I have actually a whiteboard in my shower that I have installed. My wife hates it, but it is utterly necessary. So I'm like, oh no, that's it. And so I write all the notes there. And I used to have to do it in Steam, but now I can actually write it out. And so it stays there. So it's worth it. It's for the business, I tell her.
Are you guys plotters or pantsers?
It just depends on the project for me. Anti-Darken I had to plot because it follows history, so I had to actually follow history.
Oh man,
I know, it was such a bummer. I thought it was actually going to make it easier to plot. It made it way harder. I was like, history already plotted it for me.
Yeah,
it was awful. And then my most recent book, I didn't plot at all. I just chased the story. It was so much fun. But yeah, so for me, I do everything in between.
I'm a hardcore plotter. I outline the whole book. I always know how the book ends, but I usually have a paragraph of about every single chapter before I start. Some people hate that, and I get it. They're like, oh, I don't want to write the book twice, but because I think everything I write is so plot intensive and so twist intensive, I just don't feel comfortable working on a project until I really have a good feeling about how it's going to go. Now that all changes as I'm writing it. Nothing stays the same, but I usually have the whole thing out. And then I get weird. I actually have a 6x6 storyboard, a whiteboard in my office.
Wow.
And I will put a box for every chapter on the board so I like to see the whole story at once. So I will keep that in my office the entire time working on a book, and I will look up and refer to it, and it'll have emotional arcs, plot arcs, chapter summaries, little notations where people die, so I can keep track of that. And that's I have the whole board on it at once. My wife refers to it as my beautiful mind
It's a very visual way of doing it. That's really interesting.
It's just so I can connect. I want to remember, have I talked about this character? When's the last time I did that? I can look it up and I can see, oh, it's chapter 13, I'm now chapter 18. So it's very, very formulaic, but for me it works.
Gotcha. What is something that's on your author bucket list? Was something that you haven't done or haven't written that you've wanted to?
I want to write an epic fantasy series. I've written about 120 pages of one. I don't know actually now, right at this moment, whether it's a young adult or an adult fantasy series. But I feel like that's the way you write something. I'm going to write it out and then we'll see where it lands. But it's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. I worked on it as part of my MFA program and I didn't finish it. But it's probably a book and a half away, but I definitely want to finish that at some point. That's what I grew up reading. That's what made me a reader, was really long intensive epic fantasies. Like the longer and the more volumes, the better. That's what I was into.
Okay, we have a lot to talk about because mine's exactly the same, and I have 120 pages.
That's crazy,
That
right?
it's like it's my whenever I'm not actually working on something else, I go back to it. Like, yeah. Thanks.
All right, so now we'll play a little game of Never Have I Ever.
Oh, boy.
So if you've done this and you have like a little story behind it, that it might be fun. So never have I ever fangirled or fanboyed over another author.
I have.
You have?
Yes.
Was it
Horribly.
Who was it?
It was bad. So I told the story before, but it's so embarrassing. So I was going to be on a panel that at my festival that I organized, which is Y'all Fest, and I was on with Brandon Sanderson, and I've always been a big fan of his books. And I think I was it was late in the day, and I was tired, and I had another event coming up, which I was a little nervous because I was hosting, and I just was spouting nonsense. And so the first thing I did when I talked to him, sat down, I'm like, oh, I loved what you did with the Wheel of Time series. It was amazing. They were so much better than the books before. You saved that series. Now, what I actually just said to him was I basically insulted a person who had just passed away, who had written those books.
Yeah.
And you could just see his face, and he was just like, no. And I was like, oh, so I'll just, in my head, I was like, Brendan, just talk faster. You can fix this. Just talk over it. And so the next thing I said to him was like, yeah, no, and Mistborn was one of my favorite trilogies of all time. I really enjoyed what you did with those characters. I was like, yeah, I was writing a fantasy at the time, and I realized it was just derivative after reading that, so I just deleted it because it was terrible. And so then he was like, oh, well, no, I'm sure yours was. And so I was like, oh, I made him even more uncomfortable. You know, I'm now like twice in a row. And so I just cut him off. I was like, cool, you ready to do the panel? And then I just like turned away. And I was like, that went, and I knew immediately, I'm like, what just happened? It was not great. Brandon Sanderson, I'm very sorry. You're probably not going to talk to me again, but I understand why.
Well, I'll tell an opposite story. It was when my very first book was coming out. I had just gotten my very first author copies, and I went to SCBWI, which is this big conference up in LA. And there's this author that I really loved. I had grown up reading her. Her books made my little sister a reader.
Aww.
And I got to meet her. And she was so mean and dismissive.
No,
I started crying.
No.
And I had gone up to talk to her before her
tell us
panel.
the
I'm not going to tell you the author.
That's
There's one redeeming
You're
note
gonna tell
to
me
this.
later, though.
I will. No, there's one redeeming note to this. So like I went up to talk to her like a few minutes before her panel started. She was very dismissive. I had already sat down in like the front row, and then I'm like crying, and obviously I'm crying. I'm like, okay, either I get up and leave, and she sees me get up and walk out and think I'm a brat, or I sit here on the front row like very obviously crying.
Oh.
So I left, and then later I had my friend go through her line to get the book signed for my little sister, who I never told. But in this author's defense, when her target age group came through the line, she was very sweet and very warm, and didn't make any of them cry. So, it's fine.
That's not fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
You're like, I'm still not fine.
You're going to go sit in the corner and shake
Yeah.
for a little bit.
I've since recovered. It's all good.
Never have I ever based an antagonist off of a real person.
I killed one of my publicists in a book.
Wow.
That's a good
Like,
one.
straight up murdered
Wow.
her. She
Did
wasn't.
you tell her that
Yeah.
like, this was based off of you?
I mean, I mentioned it in the acknowledgments. I don't know if she ever read the book. It wasn't. Most it wasn't personal.
Mostly.
She was just like a minor side character who gets murdered, and I was like, Casey! Killed her.
I can honestly say I don't think I ever have. I don't think I've ever taken anyone to print and done that. But I will say that in the first scene of Genesis, it's a fairly brutal. There's people die, and I didn't realize that one character who has the dramatic death of that scene dies in kind of excruciating fashion. And I named the character. I pulled from my I made the whole cast, 64 students in this high school class, and so I pulled a name, and I realized later as my first proofreader was going over it that my proofreader had the same name, and that proofreader is my wife. And I didn't realize, she's like, so you brutally murdered your Emily character in the first scene of this book? And I was like, ha! So that got changed immediately. That character got swapped for a different one, because I was like, didn't think about it, and that's not great. That's not subliminal.
Do you want to hear a worse one?
Oh, yes.
Subliminal accidental namings. I once wrote an entire book where the girl's name was Lauren and the boy's name is Aaron, and their love interests. Not even realizing till after when I said it to my sisters. I have a sister named Lauren and a sister named Aaron.
Yeah, that's super weird.
You didn't realize?
No, because they were spelled different, and I'm a very very visual person.
Okay.
And because the names are spelled different in my head, they're not the same names.
Gotcha. Okay.
but they are the same.
No, that's super weird.
Yeah, that's really weird. That book never got published.
You could just change the name.
It's fine.
Wow,
It's fine.
All right.
I didn't kill my wife, so.
No,
that's a good point. Never have I ever cried while writing. Have you ever had a scene or character you made yourself cry?
Yeah, I cry every time I read the last few sections of Brightly Burn because it was like such a journey as a writer, and then like I love those characters so much. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember early on I wrote, and it wasn't actually like a death sequence, but it was like a really stressful sequence in Seizure, my second book. And I remember just being like, for one of the first times, really caught up in the emotion of the scene. And usually I'm kind of, floating above it, and writing it, and I'm manipulating it, but I'm not in it. And then I was like, you get that like, and I'm like, whoa, what is just happened? I was like, like you get up, and I'm like,
You're like, I need a moment.
Something has gone wrong.
And don't you feel so dorky that you made yourself cry with something that came from your own
head?
Yeah.
And I wrote something in the third book in the series. There will be a third book in the Project Nemesis series. It is as untitled because the first two were easy, Nemesis, Genesis, but now I'm just like,
Exodus,
something
Leviticus.
something is.
I don't know like what to call it. But yeah, so there's a scene in there, and it really did, because after a while, you're with characters a long time, and like I was just like, I don't know, and I still don't know if I'm gonna back out of it. Like, it makes me feel bad, like someone currently isn't alive, but they may end up being, because I don't know if I can actually live with it. Like I literally was like, I don't know if I want this to land here. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's not just shock value. These are my characters. This will be there 10 years from now. Did I mean this, or but I wrote it the first time, so it's there right now in the draft, so we'll see if it stays that way.
Never have I ever ruined one of my books.
Now,
like, is there anything that you like physically ruined, or maybe
do you mean like I gave away the ending to it, or like I wrote it so
however
badly?
you want to take it?
Yes.
I mean, because according to Goodreads, I ruined Egyptian mythology.
Oh no!
Like I take thousands of years of storytelling tradition. I ruined it.
No, and I would say that I have an answer to that. So the end of Terminal, which is the 5th book in my viral series, on the last line, I thought it would be fun. This is a great question. I thought it'd be fun to like just put the last line and leave a total open twist of ambiguity that would just be like, that would end the series, and it would just be like, you would think, you're like, oh, what did he mean by that? That's fun. Everyone hates that. Everyone. No, people want their series tied up. They don't want to lose.
I'm one of those readers where I'm like, oh, no, there needs to be more.
And so I got like emails after emails, like, wait, what did you mean by that? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. What does that line mean? And I'm like, oh no, it's just because you think, I'm trying to still like, no, it's like, it's just fun, like whatever you want. They're like, not fun, hate you, like, tell me what happened. So I got so much backlash for it that I wrote a short story set 8 months later called Spike, that literally answered the question that I left open in Terminal, because I realized how many people did not enjoy. People do not like ambiguity when you end a series, and so if you read the end of Terminal and you're mad, like, don't send me a hate email.
Well, now we know there's something.
There's a story called Spike that ties that off, because my bad, like, ruined everything, turns out.
I actually, for that very specific reason, wrote not only 2 character ending chapters, but also an epilogue in Brightly Burn, because my other series, people were so like, but at the endings, because I kind of tend to like, that's the end. Have fun. And
we need to talk then.
Yeah, they don't like that. I actually found once online, speaking of fan fiction, I wasn't looking for it, but it came up in, I used to have some Google search on my name or whatever. I don't have that anymore. Somebody on fanfiction.net literally rewrote the last chapter of the Paranormal State trilogy, and they were a good writer, but they decided they did not like the way that I ended it, and so they went ahead and re-ended it for me, which was great.
Did the work for you, I guess.
You got George R.R. Martin.
I did. I got written out of my own trilogy.
Oh, it's George.
So the last thing is, what books are coming up next for you guys?
So I have a new middle grade series with Ali Condi. It's called The Dark Deep. We are frantically putting it together to get it ready for release this October 2nd of this year, and it's been a lot of fun. So we just got a new cover today. I can't show anybody, but
I mean, you can show me later.
Oh, I'll show you later. But like, it's we're excited about our new cover, because it was like, everything's sort of coming together. We're working at a frantically fast pace, but it's been fun. So that's like writing a book with your best friend is about the most fun thing you can do. Awesome. So, and then will be the third book. As of yet, Nemesis 3. We'll figure out a title for it that makes sense and is not offensive. But those are my 2 projects. So I'll have that in the fall, the middle grade, The Dark Deep in the fall, and then I'll have this conclusion next spring.
Now I just want to say every word I know that ends with sis. So you can do metamorphosis.
Oh, see, trust me, it needs to be roughly the same 7 letters.
That's
you know, there's so many.
These match. Yeah.
That's the problem when you do like really specific titles.
Yes, yes, it is.
Awful.
Turns out.
It's awful. So I have Bright We Burn, which is the last book in the Anti-Darken trilogy. It comes out July 10th, and it does have an epilogue. It's a very satisfying ending, I promise. Just a lot of people die. It's fine. And then I have The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which is a Frankenstein retelling.
Yes.
So excited.
Thank you. In honor of the 200th anniversary of publication, which is this year, and that comes out September 25th.
So soon. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you guys so much for watching. All their books and everything will be linked down below. Bye, everyone.